Real people, real opinions.
Real Talk Radio. The multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.
Ireland's classic hits.
Know that Joe Biden has landed in Aldergrove Airport on Irish soil. He's in Northern Ireland and he will be there tomorrow. He will be joining the Seanad, or as they call it in America, the Senate, our version of it, the Seanad, and he will be speaking to them and addressing the Seanad before the end of the week, and he will spend the rest of the week in the south of Ireland. And he's here, of course, to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. And when asked when he left America today what his purpose of his visit was, he said it was to keep the peace. Now, his missus didn't come with him, his wife. Only Valerie, our Hunter, and Valerie, his sister, actually came with him. Now, we have discussed Donald Trump's arrest on the show recently, and we spoke to Michael Walsh about this last week, who's written many books in relation to it, and it's always a topic of great interest to our listeners. And last week we spoke to Ray O'Hanlon, the editor of the Irish Echo in New York. This week we decided to get a more kind of legal perspective on it, and Dan Stageman is an American author and retired trial lawyer and barrister, and he has written two books, one of which is All the President's Shysters. Not all the president's men, but the shysters. And believe me, we've had a lot of American shysters as presidents. Looked closely at the lawsuits filed in an effort to overturn the 2020 election, and of course we all remember all that. And he joins me now on the line. Dan, good afternoon, or good evening to you. Afternoon American time.
Yeah, well, I'm in Spain right now, but so it's evening for me as well. But
are you living in Spain? Are you living in Spain, or?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, enjoying the sunshine. That's it.
That's it.
Okay, now you've been in the business 40 years. I'm going to hazard a guess, you don't particularly like Donald Trump anyway. So, I mean, he's in hot water now. He's got God knows how many felony charges, but the rumour is that, look, he doesn't care. It's not going to go back to court till December. Even then, he'll get a kick down the road a little bit longer. And if he manages to become the president of the United States, he'll just pardon himself.
Well, that may be his plan. That may well be his plan. But, of course, he can't pardon himself of state crimes. What's pending presently is a state charge by the state of New York, criminal charge by the state of New York, and the president of the United States cannot pardon anyone of a state crime.
Is there debate about that in relation to different lawyers and barristers disagreeing with each other in relation to what you can and can't pardon yourself with? And I know nobody has ever self-pardoned before. The closest we got to it was Richard Nixon, who decided not to do it either.
Right. Well, when it comes to a federal crime, yeah, there's you can find somebody on either end of the debate as to whether a president can pardon himself for a federal crime. But there really is no issue about the question of can a president escape state criminal charges through a self-pardon. No, he can't. He can't pardon himself. He can't pardon anyone else of a state crime.
Well, see, it would make great history for America, wouldn't it? If he does become the president, he kicks this down the road, does become the president, and then police officers walk into the White House and throw cuffs on him and take him to jail. That would certainly make history, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, it would. I am looking forward to this, at least the New York case being resolved well before that. I think he'll have a hard time delaying justice. I also think that he's really not facing prison time for this low-level felony in New York.
Okay, but others and other experts believe there are more charges to come, particularly in Georgia. They believe there are other charges that may happen before December. Do you believe that's going to happen?
I do. I certainly hope so. It should happen because what he did in Georgia was absolutely abominable. He called up the Georgia Secretary of State and he said, listen, you got to find me 11,700 votes. And he made a not at all subtle threat of criminal prosecution if the Secretary of State didn't somehow find 11,700 votes. It was pretty brazen.
I mean, I'm going to put my Trump supporter hat on for a second. I'll put my Biden supporter hat on in a few minutes because I'm impartial and I'm good at my job. But let me put my Trump supporter hat on for a second. I mean, it would be fair to say that other presidents of the United States, including Joe Biden, has been guilty of many of these things that Donald Trump has been accused of. And Donald Trump will argue, as he did in Mar-a-Lago when he made his statement afterwards, that essentially the media, the state, the DPP or the in Manhattan are basically, or the district attorney, as you call them, are picking on him, that this has never happened, and that he's calling it electoral interference, that they're purposely doing this to make it difficult for him to become the president. Do you accept that some of that is true, that they're picking on him?
No, what I accept is true, Niall, is the fact that he has escaped justice time after time after time again. Far from people being lined up to prosecute him, he has a number of people, a number of key prosecutors who have failed to prosecute him out of fear. And you can see this just when he was impeached, twice impeached. He was acquitted in each time. It wasn't because, in either case, because he was innocent. It was because the Republican Party was scared of him forming a third party and essentially sabotaging the party in order to get even.
But do you think the same thing happened to Joe Biden when he stops being president very soon? I don't think he's going to run again. I think it would be daft of him, and I think it would be daft of the American public to vote for him again at this point in his life. The man is, he's quite old at this stage. He's not going to be able to do another term of office. He's barely fit for the term of office he's in at the moment. And I think everybody would accept that. And I don't say that, by the way, with any hardness in my voice. I say that because I do feel a level of empathy for the man, because I think at this stage he's getting old. Okay, would it be fair to say that Joe Biden, and again going back to the speech that Donald Trump made in Mar-a-Lago, is guilty of equally as many crimes? So should he be arrested and charged when he comes out after being president?
No, I'm sorry, I can't say that at all. Donald Trump has been a serial liar and a grifter his entire life, and certainly throughout his presidency. He has been just a horrible liar, told literally tens of thousands of lies throughout his presidency.
But find me a politician that doesn't lie.
Yeah, well, there's a lie now and then. And, we're all human. We all tell lies from time to time. Anybody who's married tells a lie when his wife asks, does this make me look fat, or something like that?
Bit of a difference, but I mean, look for example, and I don't mean to keep making the comparison, but obviously we do have to make the comparison in relation to Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden, when he went out of office as vice president, took just as many files that he has hidden, or not hidden, but has in storage all over the place. But yet, he didn't get, well, he did get raided actually as well. But it has been reported that the Biden administration was involved in the FBI raid at Mar-a-Lago despite their denials. Do you believe they were involved?
The Justice Department is part of the Biden administration. So technically, yes, the Biden administration was involved. But that's a different question from was the Justice Department being directed by Joe Biden or any of his representatives. I would be surprised to find that was true. I think I think Biden has done a pretty good job of making clear that he's not following the footsteps of Donald Trump with respect to trying to control the Justice Department as though it were his personal attorney.
Are we ignoring what was on Hunter Biden's laptop completely?
Are we ignoring it?
The family have been very well protected. I mean, we can't say that they didn't get that they haven't had their hands dirty.
Well, the thing is here's a member of Joe Biden's family who's had drug problems. He's he may be morally questionable. Let's say he's a scoundrel. Let's just go out there and say Joe Biden's son is a scoundrel. Okay, now you go from there to saying the Biden family is involved in what's on that laptop. Well, no, Hunter Biden was. I think an uncle was implicated in some way, but Joe Biden's fingerprints aren't on it at all. And that's been very well documented.
Do you think he'll serve for another presidency?
I'm with you on that, Niall. I wish he wouldn't. I think he will. He's pretty much said that he's going to. But I wish he wouldn't.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, when we look at him now, and I don't say this with any hatred in my heart. When you look at him, I mean, the man, I personally believe is not fit for office, for the most important office probably in the world. I don't believe he's fit for it. And clearly there's other people, he's delegated jobs to other people. And by the way, it was also noted as well that Obama hasn't left Washington, which is very unusual for any sitting president to leave office and not leave the state. It's kind of almost like a tradition. So do you think Obama's still pulling the strings?
No, I have no reason to think that he is. No, I think that if I were to guess, and that's all it is, I would say that whatever faults Joe Biden has, lack of pride is not one of them. And as a matter of pride, I'd be surprised if he let his former boss pull the strings.
It's just that it is, you know yourself, it's unusual for a president who vacates to Washington not to leave the state of Washington. That's tradition, isn't it? Obama has broken that tradition.
Well, I don't know that okay, the state of Washington is different from Washington, D.C.
No, I know that, yeah.
Yeah. You mean leave Washington, D.C.?
Washington. Sorry, leave Washington, D.C. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. Well, you're actually surprising me. I don't know. Is Obama in Washington, D.C.? I think if you look it up, I tell you what, I didn't know it until last week, and I was informed by Michael Walsh, the author as well, and has written several books in relation to it. Mind you, he has a very different thinking to you, Dan. He would be on the other side of the argument. He said it's a tradition ever since he's known it that, the former president would always leave Washington, D.C. and move somewhere else after they've finished their term of office. Well, anyway, getting back to Donald Trump, do you think he can survive this? Do you think that the charges in Georgia will go away? Do you think he could get himself? Now, I think he's probably lost popularity. There was, the suggestion the Democrats did him a favor by doing this, but realistically, maybe they haven't, because those sitting on the fence are now moving away from him. Maybe they're moving to another Republican candidate, like DeSantis or something like that. But do you think he can escape this?
I think he's being cut. What's the term? Killed by 1,000 nicks. I think this arrest, this indictment, is helping him in the primary. It may help him get the Republican nomination, but I do not think being under an indictment is going to help him at all with the independents, the people who haven't made up their mind.
Those sitting on the fence, basically in between, are thinking to themselves, "It's not worth it." Is what you're saying?
Yeah. And keep in mind that when Donald Trump was running in 2016 and Hillary Clinton was being investigated, Donald Trump was saying, "Can you imagine a president who is under indictment taking the office? That's unimaginable." Well, those sound bites are going to come back and haunt him if he's the candidate.
Yeah. I mean, as I do, that Biden is in Ireland as we speak. He's not too far from where I'm speaking from right now. Do you think that his trip to Ireland will be fruitful? I mean, he says he's here for the anniversary for the peace process and for the Good Friday Agreement and to make sure we keep peace in Ireland. I don't know whether although he did say he was bringing Hunter and the sister just for a holiday because they've never been to Ireland. Do you think there's a purpose to his visit here at all? Is it to pick up an Irish vote?
Oh, I honestly don't know, and I have to tell you, I'm not a big Joe Biden fan. I abhor Donald Trump. I've never been a big Joe Biden fan. I think he does have his own problems with honesty. He's not a serial liar like Donald Trump, but he when there was a big disaster, when he pulled troops from Afghanistan, he said, "Oh, geez, the military experts never warned me this could happen." Mm-hmm. Well, that's bullshit. They did too.
By the way, who is your favorite president? Who, in your eyes, who do you believe? In our lifetime, I suppose, the last 50 years or so, who do you believe was the best president the United States has had so far?
Oh, now a lot of people gang up on me about this, but in my lifetime, the statistics, just the numbers would suggest that Clinton was. Okay. The country has been running a deficit every year except during the Clinton years. It had a surplus during the Clinton years. Crime went down. Welfare rolls were reduced. Employment was up. Clinton years were pretty good.
I mean, you could argue. I know Obama didn't do an awful lot for America. I personally believe he was one of America's worst. Well, actually, no, it would be unfair to say one of the worst presidents because Nixon was in there too in that list. So in saying that, from a point of view of doing things, I think Obama didn't achieve an awful lot considering he had 2 terms of office. But I do believe that, with all his faults, and I'm listening to your faults in relation to Donald Trump, and I'm not disagreeing with all of them, by the way. He's a businessman. He operated America like a business. But I think, he did do from a financial point of view. I think he put money in people's pockets, and people like that, don't they?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. He did what with plenty of people?
He put money in people's pockets. And if it wasn't for COVID really kind of upset his presidential term because he probably had a few other plans he wanted to instigate. But, of course, COVID took over. But he probably put a lot of money in people's pockets. And I remember when I was speaking on a radio station in Florida going back a couple of years ago, and obviously the Floridians are Republicans, and they liked him. And the reason they liked him was because they were wealthier. They had more money in their, and I'm talking about working class people. They had more money in their pocket.
The economy was incredibly stimulated during Trump's term of office. And I'm not sure that was a great thing. The Fed reduced interest rates to a level so low that banks were practically paying people to borrow money. So there was an incredible amount of money in the economy, and that made the economy super hot. And so, everybody was spending a lot of money. They had money in their pockets, but it was leaving their pockets, and they were essentially spending borrowed money.
But the taxes that he implemented on importing of white goods, for example, from China and places like that, to encourage businesses to build and to manufacture in America, obviously created jobs and obviously boosted the economy somewhat as well.
I'm not sure what the statistics are on that. I'm sorry, I don't know what the manufacturing data was.
I'm interested in your book, by the way, All the President's Shysters. I've heard of All the President's Men, but never All the President's Shysters, because there is a lot of shysters. And I suppose the book came out because you found yourself unsatisfied with the news reports regarding Donald Trump's claims that the 2020 election was rigged. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, it's pretty interesting because what happened was this. Donald Trump, in the 3 months leading up to the election, was behind in the polls, significantly behind in the polls, like 10 points down. And at that time, when the polls came out and says he's 10 points down, he went on TV and said, the only way I'm going to lose this election is if it's rigged. Remember that, folks. The only way we're going to lose is if the election is rigged. And he continued that drumbeat that the election's going to be rigged, the election's going to be rigged, the election's going to be rigged virtually every day for the months leading up to the election. And then the election happens, and he loses. And he loses not by a landslide, but not by an
he was
insignificant
well
matter.
the most popular. He was the most popular loser in American history.
It is. I guess that's one way of
What
putting
was
it.
it? 70? What did he
more-
get? 70 million votes. 70 million votes or something, wasn't it?
Sure. And only one person got more, the winner. But the population had increased, so of course both the winner and the loser are going to get more votes than had ever gotten before. So the title of having gotten second most doesn't really mean that much. But in any event, so he primed the pump for people to believe that there was going to be fraud in the election. And then after doing that, his people made requests. Hey, if you think that at the polls you saw anything fishy, come talk to us and fill out an affidavit. Well, they got a huge stack of affidavits because, of course, any Trump supporter that went to the polls and saw something they didn't understand thought that they were seeing fraud take place right in front of their very eyes.
Do you think there was any? I mean, I understand, that a lot of it was fictitious, absolutely. And all of the claims that were made by Trump and his supporters were fictitious. But, of course, it was a perfect storm because you had COVID, so you had a lot of postal votes, and you had a lot of people who couldn't obviously show up to the polls because of COVID, so they had that option of postal votes, and it was a completely unprecedented election in that respect. But do you believe that there's a possibility that there was any interference at all?
No. There were so many recounts, and the system's set up to catch fraud. I mean, if not while it's happening, after the fact. The mail-in votes were a big deal with Trump. Oh, there's going to be fraud with these mail-in votes. Well, the way the mail-in votes worked was you had to apply to get a mail-in ballot, and you had to sign your name to the mail-in ballot. And when the mail-in ballot came back, a poll worker had to compare your signature on the ballot to your signature when you registered to vote. That might have been 10 years earlier. So what happened was that, first of all, this kept people from just flooding the polls with mail-in ballots. If you didn't have a registration with a signature, you're not going to be, your mail-in ballot isn't going to be counted. And what happened is, imagine your signature today being compared to your signature 10 years ago. Now, maybe your signature looks the same, but a lot of people's signature changes over the years.
Of course, yeah. I've often signed stuff myself and been worried about it, saying that doesn't even look like my signature.
Exactly. And so what happened was, now the mail-in ballots were they were predominantly for Biden because Trump had campaigned against the use of mail-in ballots actively. And so it was mainly Democrats who used the mail-in ballots. And so, if anything, ballots were unfairly rejected because of poll watchers not being able to compare the signatures or thinking this signature doesn't look like the old signature. And so a certain percentage were just cast out for that reason. And so, if anything, the mail-in ballots were undercounted for the Democrats.
That, by the way, if people want to read all about it and your views on that and how you came to all those conclusions in relation to over 60 lawsuits that were filed, by the way, in the efforts to overturn the election, the book is called All the President's Shysters, and it's available from all the usual outlets if you want to check it out. In the meantime... Sorry.
Niall, let me just interrupt you right there and say your users should not go find that book. It is not. It is not an entertaining read.
maybe you shouldn't say that.
No,
But
I don't need the money. I don't care. I wrote the book because I had done all the research. I had to get it out of my system. But seriously, unless you're a complete and utter nerd like me, you're not going to enjoy it.
It's depressing. But listen, by the way, I mean, what do you think of, the relationship with Russia? Now, there's been suggestions of relationship with Russia with both presidents, but particularly with Donald Trump. Do you think, I mean, here's the thing, right? And somebody said to me this the other day. If Donald Trump was still the president, what's happening in Ukraine at the moment wouldn't be happening. Do you see any level of truth in that?
No, Donald Trump, of course, has said that. Someone's going to have to explain to me why they think that's true. Is it because he was so nice to Russia?
Because he was pals, because he was buddies with Putin, wasn't he? He would have rang him up and said, "Hey, Putin, what's the story? Give it up there, will you?"
Yeah. See, I don't see Putin doing favors for an American president, no matter how charming. The fact of the matter is, what I know about Ukraine is that Putin made his decision to invade Ukraine based upon what was going on in Ukraine, not based upon. I mean, I've heard people say, "Geez, if Biden hadn't left Afghanistan, Putin wouldn't have invaded Ukraine." And once again, I have to say, I don't think Putin was really all that impressed with these events. With who was the president of the United States? He was interested in what was Ukraine doing, and Ukraine was trying to move toward become a member of NATO, and that had to be stopped in the bud as far as Putin was concerned.
Okay, two last questions for you. Was Trump right? In your eyes, was Trump right about anything? Did he achieve anything at all in the 4 years?
Yes. And I have a number of progressive friends who will hate me for saying this, but the fact of the matter is the southern border of the United States is chaotic. And I disagree completely with Trump's plan for curing that. The idea of building a 2,000-mile long wall it was idiotic. But the concern about resolving the chaos at that border and having a fair and compassionate but firm border policy was important.
Well, he did get blamed for a lot of stuff. I mean, at the time, the kids in the cage situation and those photographs that went around. I mean, look, that stuff was happening before he was president. When I say cage, I mean, they were put behind bars. I mean, and they were trying to separate children from adults for their own protection too. I mean, look, there needed to be a better system in place, and that wasn't just down to Trump. That was there from Obama's time. It was there from before Obama's time. That whole system is just wrong from start to finish. And you are right; it should be done more efficiently and better, and dealt with better, and more compassionately. In relation to just finally, over the last few weeks, we've heard of many tragic events in the United States which involves guns. The gun laws in the United States. Do you think it will ever change?
Oh God, Niall!
You're an American. I just thought I'd ask you.
Yeah, no, I know, and I'm so troubled by the situation, and I don't see it, and I think the fundamental problem is the glorification of violence in the United States, and unless that changes, then the gun laws aren't going to change. I mean, they have to pass a constitutional amendment. Which is a very cumbersome process in order to do anything effective with respect to guns. And then you got the problem that there are now more guns in the United States than there are people. And how do you collect that many guns? The problem is unfathomable. It's sickening and it's depressing.
It certainly is depressing. Well, look, it's been lovely to have a conversation with you, and I really appreciate you coming on the air, Dan Stageman. And if you want to get the book, even though he doesn't personally recommend it, it's called All the President's Shysters. Do you know what? I'm actually purposely going to get that book now and read it and see how depressing it actually is. But it is a very detailed and a lot of research into it, into Donald Trump's claims that the 2020 election was rigged. Thank you very much indeed. And sure, maybe Dan will catch up with you when he's inaugurated again, huh?
There you go.
Dan, lovely talking to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank
I appreciate
you.
you coming on the
Thank
air.
you.
Real people, real opinions.
Real Talk Radio, the multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.